Hello and welcome again to our coverage of the blockade of Artsakh by the regime in Baku. Today is the 11th day, and our guest today is Varuzhan Geghamyan, who is an assistant professor at Yerevan State University and teaches on Turkey's modern history and the history of Azerbaijan. Hello and welcome, Varuzhan.
Hello, thank you.
Let's begin by giving an update. As we're recording this discussion, more than 120,000 people continue to remain trapped in the Republic of Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh. For 11 days, Azerbaijan has brazenly blocked all traffic to and from Artsakh, hindering delivery of critical supplies. Yesterday, the ICRC, or the International Committee of Red Cross, intervened to transport one cardiac patient to Yerevan, and the authorities in Azerbaijan were cynically using that this whole time as a sort of proof that, see, the corridor has not been blocked. But just last night there was footage of a Russian supply truck that was turned away, and unfortunately another individual has died because they were not able to be transported to Yerevan to seek critical care. There is a lot to be said about the humanitarian side of this crisis, Varuzhan, but let's talk a moment about the politics driving this. What do you think is the role of the Armenian government in securing the safety of the Armenians of Artsakh, 120,000 of our compatriots?
Well, to answer to this question, we first of all we need to understand what's a role Armenia's government should play according to the constitution, according to the laws, and according to the, let's say, state logic. First of all, we need to state that the Armenian government is the sole responsible and sole guarantee of the security of the Republic of Artsakh, which is stated at the level of, let's say, laws and official documents, which are still running in our country, which means that there is, let's say, not just a will to support. There shouldn't be just a will to support Artsakh, but rather there should be support because it is an important part of the enforcement of the law in our country. So, at the reality, besides this law part, besides this legal part, we should also state that it should be, sole duty of any Armenian government to support Armenians living everywhere in the world and actually living in one part of our homeland, in Artsakh. Mm-hmm. So, both on the level of legality and both on the level of moral and basic conscience, there should be a support to Artsakh. But in reality, we have just the opposite. The official government of Armenia, the de facto government of Armenia, in fact, acts like that they are not in any way representing Artsakh, that Artsakh is not part of Armenia or even of Armenian homeland. And what is also important, that the things that are happening with Armenians there are just the same as like it happens with Armenians, for example, in Indonesia, for example. So there is no real state policy towards Armenians and towards guaranteeing the security of Armenians living in Artsakh, and that's why we see that the official statements, for example, the official statements of the Republic of Armenia are very similar to the statements made by Portugal, Spain, Britain. So, just statements and some condemnation, expression, of concern, and that's it. Yeah. So, it's not. It isn't acting like the government of Armenia, but rather it's acting like a government of an X country.
That's an interesting point, because we previously had international law expert Aram Orbelian, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But so the Armenian government has commonly or frequently basically pointed the finger at the Russians, at other nations as responsible for ensuring the security of Armenians in Artsakh. and they recently requested a discussion in the UN Security Council.
Yes.
We heard a lot of statements in the Security Council meeting. Most of them were sort of, if not all of them, were sympathetic to Armenians, sympathetic, underscoring that blockading is illegal and calling on Azerbaijan to remove the blockade. But we didn't hear explicit condemnations in terms of a resolution, for instance, or maybe even a statement from the president of the Security Council. But one statement in particular drew criticism from the Armenian authorities. Many in Armenia and Artsakh, I think, found the Russian statement to be maybe artificially neutral or even pro-Azerbaijani. Specifically, Russia, I think, alluded to the blockade not being a violation of November 9 and 10 tripartite statement, but a mere adjacent issue. Can you tell me a little bit more about your overall evaluation of why Russia made the statement it did and what was driving, what was motivating them to do that?
Yeah, sure. It's an important question because really the state rhetorics and the general discussion and the discourse around the issue of corridor is, I think, artificially is being, manipulated towards the bare responsibility of the Russian part, but not in any way of the part of the government of Armenia. I would like to draw your attention to one important question before going deep into this question. It is that while having Security Council meetings in Armenia and while having different announcements by the Armenian official statesmen, we see that they are not using the correct wording for the Artsakh issue, saying that, for example, the Security Council discussed the situation in the region, especially the Latin corridor.
Yes.
I mean, not saying that this is what happens is happening not in just in the region, but rather it happening in Artsakh, in the Republic of Artsakh, or at least in Nagorno-Karabakh. Okay,
yes.
So I mean, if we see at the state rhetoric that there is no separation of the issue, it means that they understand or they see the situation as something which happens somewhere around Armenia, and actually, if it's around Armenia, it means that it's not Armenia. It is in this case, it's in Azerbaijan. So this is actually the position of Armenian side in the negotiations with Azerbaijan, in the negotiations with Russia. And by the way, the Russian side several times during this last 2-3 months announced and leaked the real content of the negotiations, saying that Armenian side actually agreed to this Azerbaijani precondition for the negotiations, which is you should consider Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan. And then we're going to talk about technical details of how you consider Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan. But the general thing, the central thing is that Armenia's government accepts and considers Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan. So if you have this situation, if you have this position, it means that the same position is being widely articulated with Russians. If Russia is part of the negotiations, then it should have at least something to have a base to go into deep and to put a pressure on Azerbaijan, saying, guys, this side is not agree, so we should find another way. But if Armenia's government saying that, we are okay with Artsakh inside Azerbaijan just providing some cultural rights, it means that the field for maneuver by the Russian side is very, very narrow. And I think that the situation currently with the corridor is just about that. Armenia is saying that you should provide security of the corridor because you put a signature under that document, though they are not mentioning that they also put a signature under that. So secondly, they are saying that if Russia is not capable of providing security, then we should have some international guarantees for this as well, which is, never gonna happen, obviously. It means that it's just a pressure on Russian side. And the third thing is that if Armenia is doing nothing with this, then I can imagine how difficult it is for the Russian side to talk with Azerbaijan. And we see that the timing is very perfect from the Azerbaijani side, knowing that Russia has other priorities in other regions, namely in Ukraine and Belarus, and that in case of any country, and in the case of Russia especially, resources for the pressure international play are very limited. So you have, you know that you can make a pressure here, and you will never get the answer which you will get in case that there is no Ukraine or Belarus issue. So knowing that Russia is not ready to fight here, because it's another field. It's a second front, and many other resources are being required for this kind of activities and initiative. So Azerbaijanis know that they can go further. They can put this red line to go again and to push this red line. And this move, this transfer of the red line, is definitely gonna be on the basis of the Armenian interest, not of the Azerbaijani, because Azerbaijani side is the strongest side right now.
Aram Orbelian actually brought up an interesting point, which is that the basis for which the Security Council meeting was held, at least there was some heavy citations and heavy reference made towards the September 13 Azerbaijani aggression against Armenia proper. It didn't mention that much anything about Artsakh, about the Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh or the Republic of Artsakh. So there seems to be some, I think he would also agree with your point of view. But I think you already answered this. But in short, what can Armenia expect from the UN Security Council in this state? Can we expect a resolution, and how binding would that resolution be against Azerbaijan?
Any kind of international document, any kind of international condemnation, any kind of international anything will work in case when there is a process in parallel which is being initiated by the Republic of Armenia and the Armenian, let's say, general Armenian factor. Namely, if there is no real work on the ground by the Armenian government, which is also showing the readiness to use other types of tools to solve the situation, to solve the problem. In case of absence of this type of readiness, no kind of international document or resolution is gonna, let's say, play a positive role in the situation. It is just gonna be a piece of paper which are, let's say, frequently appearing in the Armenian history, starting with the Sever Treaty in 1920, up to other documents which we had, but they never been implemented just because there was no force behind the document. Any kind of document is gonna be really helpful if the position of the Armenian Republic of Armenia and the government of Armenia is for keeping Artsakh, not blaming others, not blaming, like, I don't know, Russians, Iranians, I don't know, Indians, but rather putting everything on this issue and showing the readiness to use other types of instruments which we have to solve the question.
All right, let's move to other sort of current events that were happening. Recently there was reports that the government of Azerbaijan has actually sold the mines which they're using as a pretext for their special environmentalist operation to block the lifeline road. So Azerbaijan essentially has sold the rights to those mines to a British company, and we know that the government of Britain is heavily invested in Azerbaijan, and British companies also. And there was recently news that Richard Moore, head of MI6, was in Armenia recently. There is a lot of speculation about this, but I think doesn't have to be speculation. It can be an educated guess, or maybe there are other just sort of reasonable sort of thoughts that could be framed around this. Why was this? What is your explanation for the visit, especially given that Armenia and the UK don't have very sort of close ties, at least over the last decades,
and no common interest, by the way. I think that to correctly understand the aims of the visit of MI6 head, we should understand the general context. The context is very, very clear currently. I mean, if like a year ago or 2 years ago, some were still speculating about what's happening, now it is very clear if you just follow the news and even not being a specialist. So what we have in reality, we have South Caucasus, which is a key geopolitical spot on the map of Eurasia. You have South Caucasus, which was for the last 100 years, with some minor changes and minor pauses, was a zone of influence of Russia. And Russia was always competing to keep that zone of influence over South Caucasus, at least with two major regional powers, Turkey and Iran. And of course, this was happening in more general context where there is a fight or there is a contest between Russia on the one hand and collective West or West on the other hand. So what was happening here was part of the so-called Great Game. Now we see that with limited Russian resources and Russia's, let's say, change of priorities because of the war in Ukraine, we have a situation when Russia's positions are very weak in South Caucasus. There are two countries in South Caucasus which were out of the Russia's influence already for many years. Georgia, which is a clear Western ally here in the region, though this new government is trying to somehow balance the influence of different poles. At the same time, there was Azerbaijan, which was actually, it is commonly in journalism, we are using the word small brother, but actually it was the best ally of Turkey, not only in the region, but actually in the world. There is no other country which has the same weight and the same price for Turkey as Azerbaijan. So Turkey is very, very present there, and it is enlarging its presence there. So Russia is weakening. Iran can fill the vacuum which is emerging out of the Russia's weakness, and there is Turkey, which is trying to have its own zone of influence besides Azerbaijan and part of Georgia, so Armenia. And we see that this is one of the main priorities of Turkish government, and it was always like that. So Russia is trying to keep its influence, Iran is trying to increase its influence, and Turkey is trying to keep its influence. For Russia and Iran, there is a clear understanding that Turkey is a Western ally. It's a part of NATO, and Turkey's appearance in South Caucasus is a threat to both Turkey, to both Russia and to Iran. So what they can do is to use common resources, collaborate with the aim not to keep Turkey far away from South Caucasus. At the same time, there is Turkey, which is trying to be very active in South Caucasus and enlarge its zone of influence. And if it's enlarging its influence, it is going to be in place of Russian or Iranian influence. So this is fully 100%, let's say, is supported by West, because West sees South Caucasus as an important geopolitical spot. So it should take out Russia, it should take out Iran from here, and what country is going to be the ally of West here? Of course, it's Turkey. So that's why we see that what is happening right now, it is there is an attempt to take out Russia and take out Iran and to bring Turkey here in the region. And at this point, we have this great game which is currently happening around and probably also in Armenia. And that's why we have also very clear support for the Armenia's acting government from the West. I mean, there is no condemnation of any violence of democracy, any human rights violence which happens in Armenia, I mean, with unprecedented scale. But I mean, no condemnation from the West, and there is a clear support from West, and there is also clear support for the policy which is being implemented by Pashinyan's government towards Artsakh issue. I mean, yeah, if you are agreed to give Artsakh to Azerbaijan, then this is the end of Russian presence actually here. That's the, let's say, there's the logic behind of West support to Armenia's current government. So in this great game we have changing skills, changing tactics, but not general strategies. And I think that it is very, very clear here that unfortunately for the West, the Armenian interests, the Armenian rights of Armenians are not that much important if they compare it with the possible future of non-Russian South Caucasus.
Yeah, that's an important point. And you know, I have many friends in the West, and naturally, you know, their position is to support their own governments, but you know, many of them would ask me why. Well, what's the problem with Armenia switching poles? Can you talk a little bit more about that threat? And specifically, I think many Armenians are very sensitive to Turkey, given the historic sort of the genocide that happened, and that's still, you know, in our minds. You know, I am a descendant of genocide. Many Armenians are descendants of genocide. Do you think that it's all behind us, and can Turkey be counted? And like, let's say, if Russia leaves and Turkey comes in, do Armenians have anything to worry about?
Well, I can answer very shortly, and then I can answer very putting some more context. But to answer shortly, just I should remind our followers that only 2 days ago, the ambassador of Turkey to Azerbaijan, Cahit Bagci, visited the place where they blockaded Artsakh, and supported those who were doing that. And Turkey is fully supporting what Azerbaijan does. So Turkey is participating in the genocide act currently, which is happening in Artsakh. So Turkey is part of what they are doing, and Turkey is behind of what they are doing, because it is very difficult to imagine that Azerbaijan without support by Turkey would be possible. I mean, would have possibility to sustain all the pressure which is coming from different sides, humanitarian organizations, etc., etc. And of course, it has that support. That's why they are very confident in what they are doing. And officially, by the way, Turkey said that they are supporting what Azerbaijan is doing right. So I mean, there is no I think let's say any other discussion about what's happening in Artsakh right now. It's a clear act of genocide. So Azerbaijan is condemning an act of Azerbaijan is conducting an act of genocide. Turkey supports the act of genocide. So do Armenians have something to worry about? Definitely they have, because if they are doing that in Artsakh, who says that they are not going to do the same in Syunik, in Vayosdor, in Yerevan, or in Shirak? No guarantee for that.
And of course, Turkey's expansionist policies all around its borders also indicate, you know, whether it's the Kurds, the Syrians, they all seem to be victims of this policy, and it's not all just, you know, peaceful. Turkey's,
let's say, policy in the region is very, very clear, and it always was about that. We have strategic interests in this region, especially in Armenia. Armenia, as an independent political factor, is contradicting to what we need in South Caucasus, and they really need a lot here in the South Caucasus, because South Caucasus is actually a key spot for Turkish ambitions beyond South Caucasus, in northern North Caucasus, in Russian Turkic-speaking let's say regions, in Central Asia, in northern Iran, and in generally in Middle East. So if they have Armenia and they have this direct borders with Azerbaijan, then we are gonna have another type of Turkey, a regional superpower. So why Turkey shouldn't do that? Just because Armenians are saying that, guys, we gave you Karabakh, so let us to live in a peace? No, of course. And of course, I know that there is a discussion about this a lot in the Armenian world currently, and they are saying that, okay, in case of Karabakh, it is very obvious because Karabakh is a disputed territory according to, let's say, negotiations, but Syunik, Vayosdor, Tavush, and any other part of Armenia is not negotiated. It's a part of recognized Republic of Armenia. Okay, then we should bring a lot of examples of Syria, Iraq, Cyprus, Libya, and many other places in the world when Turkey is acting the way it wants, with expansionism, with the clear aim to not only to intervene but also to take and to occupy the territories and to make them be part of their own country. And in no, I mean, with all these mentioned cases, according to the international law, Turkey broke that law. I mean,
yes.
Syrian territorial integrity is there. Iraqi territorial integrity is there. Cyprus is a whole country recognized by everyone in the world. But it's not a real obstacle for Turkey if there is a possibility to occupy that and to keep that land.
Yeah.
So this is going to happen with Armenia as well. Who said that something is going to keep us from Turkish invasion other than real troops on the ground and our allies which have troops on the ground? So coming to your first to the first part of your question, there is no problem with the West. The problem is that for West, here in the region, there is one ally, clear ally, part of the member of NATO. It's Turkey. And they are definitely gonna act according to Turkish interest in the region. And they are not, for them the priority is to take out Russians, not keep Armenians or Armenians' rights here in the region. So if Turkey is gonna take South Caucasus, they're gonna be happy because Turkey is taking South Caucasus from Russia and from Iran. So what Turkey is gonna do afterwards, they are gonna keep the rights of Armenians living in Artsakh. They are gonna kill another 100,000 Armenians, or they gonna like occupy the country, putting the agenda they want to put. West really doesn't care, and I can really understand this logic. It's very simple. It's very basic and very rational from their point of view, and all the human rights stuff, all the these democratic values and other unannounced values are not that much important as geopolitical interests, which are very clear, very obvious. And just 2 days ago, another agreement was signed between Azerbaijan and European Union, and European Union again stated that Azerbaijan is a key partner. They are never saying the same for Armenia.
Yes.
So I mean, this is very very clear.
Yeah.
This is not about just choosing, the values. You are not choosing the values. You're actually choosing the possibility between possibility of having values or not having at all.
Was it Ahmet Davutoglu who was the author of the zero problems with our neighbors policy? And was it I forget, was it him who said that right now, a few days ago, he said right now is a good time to pressure
to take
Armenia.
Whatever we want.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's another I think evidence that I'd like to bring. Varuzhan, you have been recently taking part in different conferences around the region, in Armenia specifically. I believe a week ago you were in Goris. There were some Iranian colleagues there, Iranian political scientists, and I believe you were also participating in discussions with Iranians today. Iran is obviously very concerned about this. And what are Iran's interests? I mean, Iran has at various times declared red lines and stated that Sunni or Armenia's territorial integrity in the south is a red line for them because it would basically cut off. You just have to look at the map. It would cut Iran's ties with Russia. But how serious is Iran about this? And for those in the West, maybe like who are just exposed to the like short headlines in the media, does Iran have legitimate concerns in this region? And should the West be more permissive of those concerns being expressed, as opposed to sort of recently, I believe the U.S. State Department said that we would not allow Iran to destabilize the region. Do you think that's a logical or a sane policy to pursue?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Iran's positioning for the region. As I said, they are also part of the competition for South Caucasus. I mean, they were always part of this competition, and actually for a very long period they were the only, let's say, sole owners of South Caucasus, and there are natural interests for Iran in this region, because it's the northern border, it's the, let's say, the only route which is out of NATO's influence. Armenia and Georgia are not part of NATO, so I mean this is a clear important route for Iran towards Black Sea region and northern Eurasia in general. So from that point, Iran is of course concerned, but also there is a concern that if Turkey is present on its northern borders, then definitely the all the pressure which is currently being used by Turkey and Azerbaijan to somehow organize, mobilize Turkish-speaking Iranians in the north of Iran, so pushing them to go into the field of separatism and other, let's say, non-appropriate things, definitely is going to be higher if they are in Artsakh, if they are in Syunik. We see right now that during this last events in Iran, we have seen that there are tendencies towards separatism by this Turkic-speaking still marginal group, but they have a capability to make more if there is a vacuum or any weakness by the Iranian state. So Iran is very, very concerned with the situation, because they know that in case the Turkish influence here in the region is larger than they have right now, they are gonna pretend on the territories of Iran as well, of the northern Iran. And this was even, if I'm not mistaken, articulated on the highest level as well. I mean, using different diplomatic channels. And also about this aim, Turkish president and Azerbaijan's president, they talked several times. Aliyev just 2 or 3 weeks ago again stated that they are concerned with the rise of so-called Azerbaijanis living in the northern Iran. So for Iran, this is if for us this is existential threat, for Iran this is also an existential threat, but on a level of superpowers. I mean, on a level of empires, let's say. So that's why they see Syunik as the last red line that they can somehow, let's say, keep. Of course, they understand that Syunik without Nakhichevan and without Artsakh is very, very weak. So in the future, they should also try to work on this direction. But at the moment, keeping Syunik security until the moment when Turkey is weak and the Armenian government is pro-Armenian and pro-Iranian, in that case, of course, they will try to do more. So that's why Iran is very concerned, and that's why there are always constant messages coming from Iranian side on very, very highest level. With even if you remember, during the summer, the supreme leader of Iran several times talked about the importance of Syunik, which is, I mean, an unprecedented thing. Iran's supreme leader talks very rarely and very not often it talks about borders of other countries. So that's why we should take this very seriously, and it is very clear, it should be very clear for us that Iran is a natural ally currently. Not because we are like the best people in the world and they want to be with us, but just because our interests are coinciding. For Iran, it's better to have Armenian Syunik rather than have Turkish Sunni, Turkish Zangezur. So that's why they are supporting, and this is one of the directions where we can work towards. You had another question, but I forgot.
So the biggest challenge is trying to explain to a Westerner why sort of Iran has legitimate concerns here, and why Armenia should, for instance, maybe even cooperate militarily because it is in their interests. Obviously, the West does make exceptions to its sort of policies, even for its enemies, or even for states that it considers, against democracy, against human rights. The exceptions like that are always made. So why did many saw the U.S. State Department warning to Iran to stay back as maybe jumping ahead of the horse a little bit? Is the U.S. How can we work towards convincing the U.S. and Western partners that this is a legitimate?
Well, in general, one thing we need to explain it is that we are not choosing between options 1 and option 1 or option 2, which are about preferences or values or something. We are choosing between security and a clear threat. Unfortunately, it happened like that.
Yes.
Turkey is much more important for West than Armenia.
Yes.
Azerbaijan is much more important for the West than Armenia. Actually, Armenia is not interesting at all. Armenia is interesting as long as it is with Russia and Iran.
Yes.
And this interest is to take out Russia and Iran from here. Whenever they take Armenia out, whenever they take Russia and Iran from Armenia, then Armenia is losing all its value.
Yeah.
And they are not, as I said, they are not gonna care about what happens with Armenia with Turks, or with Armenians with Turks, or Azerbaijan is gonna occupy Sunik or not. It's important that the occupation is being, let's say, operated by their own ally, Turkey or Azerbaijan, not by Russia or by Iran. Mm-hmm. So that's why it is very important first of all, for Armenians to understand that we are not just living somewhere in Fiji and choosing between hot or cold water. We have to be allies with those who are ready to sustain Turkish threat, which is very, very clear. Yeah. Very, very, very clear. It's not an archaic or outdated thing. It's very updated. It's very modern. It's very clear, and it's very real. I remember that the discussions and talks before 2020 were very similar to what we had right now, but with using other let's say examples. When we were saying that Turkey has plans to occupy whole Artsakh and then go to Sunik, people were saying, like, those who are not informed at the required level, they were saying that, guys, no, it's pan-Turkism or something like that. Like, it is an outdated thing. You should not think about that. If we live in peace, we live in peace.
Right.
But when we were saying that, whenever they are gonna take Artsakh, next they are gonna take Sunik. Again, this was faced with criticism, and there were many speculations. When Artsakh, we lost 75% of Artsakh, and we had clear threat to Sunik. Now we are discussing whether they are gonna take the whole Sunik or only one part of it. So but still we're talking about the fact that they're gonna take it.
Now we're actually discussing whether Gyumri is important to Turks or not. So.
But I have a, let's say, spoiler for everybody. Everything here is important for Turks, from Gyumri up to Kapan, from Stepanakert up to Armavir. So whenever you think that there is no threat because I already gave everything to them, believe me, there is still something that they can really take out of Armenia, because as long as there is an independent political factor here, no matter how weak it is, but still, if there is an independent Armenian political factor here, then we are clearly gonna have Turkish threats. Turkish threats are gonna disappear only in case when there is no Armenia.
Thank you, Varuzhan. We're out of time. I appreciate your time today. And again, for our viewers and listeners, this has been a collaboration between the Groong podcast and 168 Hours. Please visit us at podcasts.groong.org or 168 AM for further information. And thank you for your time.